Hey everyone, welcome to Zero's Garage. Today is Friday, March 18th, 2016. How many of you remember this car? This is the 2004 Mazda 6 4-cylinder that I did the engine swap time lapse on, and today I'm going to share with you the solution to one of the most perplexing car problems I have ever had to diagnose in my life. Stay tuned. So yeah, the problem was my daughter called me up from the side of the road saying, Dad, my car died. I said, all right, where are you? And she was like, all right. And she ended up being about 3 miles from home. So when I got there, she described the problem. She said that she was coming down the hill with her foot off the gas, and the engine was making a tapping sound, and she noticed that the engine revved to about 2300, and then you just died. Just like that. Died. Wouldn't run. I checked for fuel pressure at the side of the road. It sounded like it wasn't getting fuel. That's what it sounded like. It sounded like it wasn't getting fuel. I checked for fuel pressure at the side of the road. When I disconnected the fuel line, fuel spurted out. So I knew it had pressure. And later checking the pressure, it measured exactly 60 psi. The spec is 55 to 65, so that was right on. When I checked for spark, something very unusual happened. I would crank the engine. The spark plugs, all 4 spark plugs, would fire once and then stop. Couldn't figure that out. Just couldn't figure it out. I took the variable valve timing solenoid out and cleaned that, tested it for operation. It worked fine. I checked the camshaft position sensor. That worked fine. I checked the codes in the computer. And the codes that were stored in the computer were P0340, P0011, and P0012. All 3 of those codes relate to camshaft timing. But all of the camshaft devices that I checked just checked out fine. I took the injectors off. I cleaned and tested all 4 injectors. They checked out perfect. What else did I check? Yeah, I think that's about it. And I know it was getting fuel, although it sounded like it wasn't getting fuel. Very strange when you crank the engine. It would go. It would try to catch and then stop. Try to catch and then stop. It wasn't until one of my nerd herd Adirondacks for me, thank you Adirondacks, really appreciate that, found a YouTube video from a mechanic in New Jersey who described a very similar problem. And the problem turned out to be the camshaft timing. But how is that possible? Let's take a little closer look at the camshaft mechanism here, and I'll show you why I really felt that couldn't possibly be the case, and yet it turned out to be the case. All right, so here is the top of the motor with the valve cover removed, and you can see that this engine has a timing chain. A couple of people suggested, oh, well, it jumped a tooth. Well, I'm sorry. Timing chains don't jump teeth. If a timing chain is going to jump a tooth, it's broken. Okay? I could see that being a plausible theory for a timing belt, but a timing chain, absolutely no way. All right? And that's why I kind of ruled out the possibility that, no, it's not going to jump. And I also made the false assumption that the bolts, that the sprockets for the camshafts slipped onto the end of the camshaft, and I made the false assumption that they have keys on the shaft to keep them aligned properly. They don't. If you loosen up that bolt, this sprocket will spin freely on the end of the cam, and the cam can come completely out of alignment. Same is true for the intake valve. This assembly right here is the variable valve timing assembly that is controlled by this solenoid. The solenoid has a set of pistons down below that release oil pressure into the body of the variable valve timer here and change the timing of the intake cam right there. So what do you need to do? Well, first thing you need to do is find out, is it really out of alignment? And the way you determine that, come around to the driver's side. Right? And you will notice, I'll try to shine better light on it with my drop light. All right, you'll notice that there's a slot cut in the back of the camshaft. And that slot, when the engine is precisely at #1 cylinder top dead center, is precisely horizontal. It's precisely level with the head. And you can tell the exhaust one is. The intake, however, is not. So yes, indeed, it was a camshaft timing error. And the timing error is the result of the camshaft being too loose. This bolt right here on the variable valve timer being too loose, and the cam came out of sync with the timing chain and the crankshaft. Consequently, when you try to crank the engine and the cam is so far out of alignment, the PCM says, I don't think so. You know, I gave you a little bit of spark. I don't think so. Try again. Crank again. Give a little spark. I don't think so. And that process is repeated over and over until you finally beat your head against a wall and say, all right, let's look at other options. All I'm going to do to line it up is take another specialty service tool, which is a 3/16 inch diameter piece of rod, and slip it into the slots of the camshaft. I could probably eyeball it better than this, but yeah, I think 3/16 is about the right size. Let's check here, see if this will go in. Yeah, it's a little sloppy. I might have to find something a little bit bigger than 3/16. We'll see what I can find in my scrap bin here. Yeah, so anyway, that's how I'm going to align it. So how do you find #1 top dead center? Well, first of all, #1 top dead center is on the compression stroke. So #1 is the piston closest to the passenger side, and you'll notice the cam lobes are both not depressing the valve stems. So I'm pretty close right there. And the reason you had to take off the wheel and get the cover off here is so that you can get to the harmonic balancer. Harmonic balancer has got a hole in it that is directly opposite a threaded hole in the block itself. So when you get the harmonic balancer in the crankshaft precisely to the top dead center position by rotating this bolt here, you'll also notice that there's a lighter colored tooth sprocket on the crankshaft position sensor right there. Then you can insert the very expensive, available at your Mazda dealership only, specialty service tool, otherwise known as a 10mm bolt, that goes into the block, locks the harmonic balancer in position so that you can tighten up your bolts on the camshaft sprockets without disturbing the position of the crankshaft while you're doing that, and everything will hopefully stay in alignment. And if I cannot get an open-end wrench on that bolt head, which has a very tight clearance to the cover of the timing chain cover on the block, I'm going to have to remove the serpentine belts, the motor mounts, the harmonic balancer down below, and all of the pulleys around the timing chain cover, and take the timing chain cover off so that I can get to that bolt to tighten it up and align the intake camshaft. Not really looking forward to that. All right, so I was able to put a wrench on the hex nut surface that is on the intake camshaft, and by hand I was actually able to move this back into position without touching this bolt. So I know that bolt is not torqued down properly. And you can see now I've got my homebrew specialty service tool. I had to put it in the grinder a little bit to shave off the edges so that it would sit in the slotted openings. And now the cam is in position. I just need to get this bolt on the variable valve timing mechanism torqued down to spec with an open end wrench that I was able to get in there. I'm going to have to modify the open end wrench a little bit so that it will sit inside that well that the bolt sits in, and get as much bite on the bolt as I can to not cause any damage to the bolt. Here's the 15mm wrench that I MacGyvered to fit inside the well that sits in. All right, there's what the unmodified side of the wrench looks like, and there's what the modified side looks like that allowed me to slip this over and then put a shim inside there to hold it tight against the head of the bolt. And I was able to, by hand with a breaker bar, tighten this nut up substantially with the camshaft locked in the correct position over here with my specialty service tool. Woohoo! Obviously, I don't know exactly how far I've torqued it down. I had to pretty much guesstimate it with my calibrated arm and guesstimate what the correct torque is. I can tell you it's a lot tighter than it was. So that's it. As ridiculous as it sounded to me originally, that camshaft being out of position, now that I have it back in position and all torqued down, I think that's actually going to make it run. So now it's time to put everything back together. I at the very least have to get the valve cover back on, and in which case everything's almost all back together anyway. So put it all back together, give it a crank, see if it runs. Incidentally, 500 watt painter's light. World's best mechanics drop light. Okay, boys and girls, here goes. And survey says That was freaking awesome. That was awesome. I don't even want to talk about that lower engine knock. That's what she complained about. She started hearing. So the whole reason that the cam probably got out of alignment is because it probably partially seized in the cylinder head and went out of alignment. It's probably a good thing. Probably saved the engine because it took 4 quarts to bring this car back up to full. 4 quarts. Epilogue. Now that I've had a day to calm down and chill out a little bit over having to struggle for 4 days trying to figure out what the problem was with this car, let me just say that I inappropriately misdirected my frustration at my daughter, who I had asked to check her oil, but you know, in hindsight and in retrospect, I can't really blame her. I have a very clear understanding now of the sequence of events as they unfolded. She was running very low on oil, that's obvious. It took 4 quarts to bring it up to full. The other half a quart is in the oil filter, so really it was bone dry. She started to notice a problem going to work, but didn't really pay much attention to it because it wasn't severe. Coming home, the tapping got loud, and that's when the engine failed. The sequence of events, as I now understand them, are that the camshaft, the intake camshaft, probably partially seized in the cylinder head, which threw it out of alignment, which is what caused the engine to stop running, and as I stated earlier, probably saved the engine from complete seizure altogether. Now that I have the engine running, we hear that lower engine knock, so it's pretty clear that she spun one of her connecting rod bearings again. This will be the second time this has happened. Is it her fault? I don't think so. My daughter is your average consumer, okay? And according to her, and I have no reason to doubt, at no time during any of her engine failures did she ever once see the oil filter or the oil light come on, meaning no pressure. At no time. This is a huge indictment against the automotive industry, okay? Mazda partnered with Ford. Ford uses the same 2.3 liter engine in their cars. I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that this scenario plays out for hundreds or thousands of other Ford and Mazda customers, and I'm sure this is Ford's influence on Mazda. I have no doubt about that at all. My wife had a 1975 Ford Mustang II with a 2300 four-cylinder in it. And out of the blue one day, her car seized up. And what happened was one of the pistons literally broke in half across the middle of the piston. So from the wrist pin up, the piston continued to travel. From the wrist pin down, the skirt of the piston seized in the cylinder block. When the second half of the piston went up the cylinder wall, it went up crooked and split the cylinder wall going all the way up. And when I did my research on that engine and found so many other people having the same problem, what was the cause? The cause was Ford decided to save $1.50. $1.50 every single block, and omitted drilling out an oil passage in the connecting rods that provided extra oil to the oil ring on the piston. Isn't that special? And I'm sure a very similar influence was born on this 2.3 liter that was in my daughter's Mazda. So the oil light never came on, and if the oil light ever does come on and you own one of these cars, all it's telling you is, sorry customer, you're shit out of luck. Your engine's already fried. The same is not true, however, for your master brake cylinder. A master brake cylinder, on most cars anyway, at least on my wife's Toyota and on my daughter's Mazda, has a low level sensor. Okay, so if the level in the master brake reservoir drops below a certain point, before it completely runs out, it will give you the light on the dashboard and say, hey, Mr. Customer, you're a little low on your brake fluid. Maybe you should top it off before you lose your brakes and smash into a telephone pole somewhere, or run through an intersection and get broadside and T-boned and killed. Same is not true for oil filter, for the oil level. Some cars, I believe, do have an oil level indicator for the oil of their automobile. This car does not. It has an oil pressure indicator. And if the pressure is at 0, that's when the light comes on. And at that point, your car's already toast. It's pretty clear that the car had oil pressure the whole time, but the oil level was so low that it was not getting lubrication, which caused a series of events to occur that created the breakdown condition for my daughter's car. The moral of the story is, no matter what kind of consumer you are, man, woman, adult or child, please, please check your oil level every 1,000 miles. Some manufacturers will even tell you that their automobiles consume a quart of oil every 1,000 miles. In my estimation, and in my opinion, that is completely unacceptable. All right? Most cars can run 5,000 miles between an oil change, and maybe by the time you get to the 5,000 mile mark at the oil change interval, you're down a quart at that point. But automobile manufacturers will tell you, well, it's not always the same for every engine. You know, you might get 5,000 miles, you might only get 1,000 miles a quart. And for those customers, boy, you better really check your oil level very, very often. Back in the day when I used to be a gas station attendant, my very first job ever, when full service gas stations really were full service, you asked the driver, could you please pop the hood? Let me check your oil. Let me check your washer fluid. Let me clean your windshield for you while I fill your gas tank. All right, that was full service. Now, self-service, you have to do those things yourself. You have to. Please, 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 don't overlook the maintenance of your vehicles. I'm publishing this video also because there is so little information on the P0340 condition on these engines that I felt it worthwhile to publish this video, because, like I said, there is a vacuum of information regarding this motor failure, and I hope you will find this video useful. As always, thank you for watching. Please rate, share, comment, and subscribe to my videos. And peace, everyone. And now I'm going to make myself a drink.